Let's talk about cars. Let's talk about the Canadian automotive industry for In Transit today. Workers, companies in the automotive sector are bracing for major disruptions after President Donald Trump followed through with his tariffs on Canadian and Mexican goods. The 25% tariffs on Canadian exports expected to drive up costs for automakers. Let's talk about the impact of those decisions. David Kennedy joins us now. He's Toronto Bureau Chief with Automotive News Canada. Hi, David. Welcome to the show.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
First things first, David, I want you to hear from Flavio Volpe. He joined us in the last hour of the show. Of course, you know he's president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. I asked him about how bad it could get here. Here's what he said.
It's very bad. In essence, this tariff represents every day's shipment with 25% tariff on it represents the entire week's profit. So every day that we run with this tariff, you're writing off your profit for the week. Now, how many weeks of profit can you wipe out before you run out of weeks and you're going insolvent? I'll tell you the answer is one. And for some, it's none. It's bad.
So, David, is that what you're hearing as well? Just how bad is it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a dire situation for, both suppliers and automakers here. I talked to Elena Payne, the head of Unifor, yesterday, and she said close to the same thing, that, this week looks normal for production here in Canada. The week after, all bets are off. Things may grind to a halt in Canada, and we could even see, basically the entire North American industry grind to a halt if suppliers, stop building parts because they're not going to make a profit. Automakers are going to be forced to shut down their lines too.
Okay, so you know what? Actually, take me through that, right? Like on how it would play out on both sides of the border, in both Windsor and Detroit. The timeline before we see a complete shutdown, because if everyone's shut down, I mean, it's got to resonate in the White House, I would imagine.
Yeah, there's no question alarm bells are ringing in a number of places already. But yeah, I mean, it essentially works like that. Thousands of parts go into every vehicle, and Automotive runs on what they call just-in-time delivery. So, they don't have big inventories of parts that they can, stockpile and pull off the shelf and put in. And these parts are all custom built. So, if a factory in Windsor is supplying a part across the river to Detroit, and they don't have that part to go into that vehicle on that day, they've got to stop their lines. They can't build it. And, you're going to see a lot of that as, we've seen from suppliers already, signals that they're not going to pick up the tab to pay that 25%. Automakers certainly don't intend to pay it either, at least not on any long-term basis. So that's kind of the theory here, that, it remains to be seen whether or not we'll see things grind to a halt, because they haven't yet. As Flavio said, we're still in the first hours of this, so we have some time. But if it continues, most observers expect things to stall within days or weeks.
A lot of people didn't think we'd even get here, that there'd be some sort of negotiation that would happen before any tariffs were imposed. Yet here we are. But is there still a hope behind the scenes that this really just is temporary, and that going forward there will be some sort of negotiation that leads to no tariffs in this industry?
It certainly looks that way. I think, and you can see it in financial markets and kind of signals from the U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in the last 24 hours has kind of, signaled a compromise could be in the works here. And I think that's the expectation among everybody in the industry right now, that, the tariffs are going to hang over Canada and Mexico for quite some time. But at least in the short term, it kind of looks like we may see some sort of compromise today that could involve automotive and some other industries as well. So it's certainly possible that we could see some relief later this afternoon. But ultimately, it comes down to what the White House has to say about it. And, there's not too much we're getting that's concrete out of there right now.
Could, at the end of the day, this work out in the sense, because I heard Donald Trump taking aim at South Korea, the other day, and South Korean automakers. And could this end up working out if there's a deal done, where the North American automotive sector is on the same page, and they go with sort of a Fortress North America approach? Could that actually work out well for the Canadian automotive sector?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, the thing is that's kind of gets lost in all this is that we already have a deal. one that Donald Trump negotiated back in his first term. And it was actually very beneficial to the auto industry in Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. We saw parts content, which is essentially all those suppliers that are supplying the automakers go to 75% North American content in every North American made vehicle. So we saw that go up from 62.5, and it may not sound like all that much, but we're talking billions of dollars when that happens. And if a deal can be cut here between Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. to perhaps increase that even more, 85% local content, local being any of those three countries, it'll actually help the Canadian industry and the American industry and the Mexican industry in the long term. It's just a matter of, hammering out some of the details and kind of hitting home at the White House that, this industry and having all three countries involved is beneficial to all three countries.
What does this mean about the price we're paying for vehicles? I know consumers, people, our listeners, they send me text messages all the time about how expensive cars are to buy. What can we say about how all of this is going to affect the price we're paying for vehicles?
Yeah, well, the short answer is it's not going to help. And unquestionably, too, we've seen the starting price of vehicles rise, 30, 40, 50%. Since 2019. And, a lot of that is parts related, pandemic related. But at the same time, it's unlikely we're going to see them drop anytime soon. And the tariffs are only going to magnify that. We expect if they stay in place for any length of time, you can count on $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 added to the starting price of essentially every vehicle.
And with consumers just being very sensitive on pricing, $5,000 or $6,000, that leads to less. That'll lead to lower sales. That's a significant amount. So I imagine there's a whole bunch of people worried about just sales numbers in general if they've got increased pricing.
Oh, unquestionably. There is no doubt that it will hit the industry very hard if this actually, stays in place very long. You're right that sales will take a hit. People will hang on to their vehicles longer. The used market is going to get a lot more interesting. Used prices we saw during the pandemic already spiked. They've come down a bit, but not that much. But they're gonna stay steady or even get stronger if we see these tariffs stay in place and raise the cost of new vehicles.
David, we were told that the Prime Minister and the President are going to be speaking on the phone this morning. I see 10:45 on my clock and no update there yet. There's just an hour and 15 minutes to go in this morning. So hopefully we'll get a resolution sooner than later. Thanks for joining us this morning.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
David Kennedy is Toronto Bureau Chief with Automotive News Canada.